I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Yeah, hi everybody. Ron here from The Truth About Addiction. Welcome to another episode. Today's episode, we have Richard Smith. Richard's a very good human being, been doing good things for a very, very long time. I knew a lot about Richard before I ever got to meet him, and I love his story, and I hope you do too. Richard, please tell us your story, brother.
Thanks, mate. Well, thanks for that introduction. I get away with that quite a bit. I'm a nice bloke and I've done a lot of good work, but I suppose what I can do is sum up my life by saying, I ended up a young boy in West Heidelberg who loving, caring parents, no money, and the only way out of West Heidelberg was either to be a thief, a cop, a social worker, or then later on a drug dealer. So obviously I couldn't play sport that well, and I didn't want to be a cop, so I chose the latter, and that certainly got me out of that poverty line, and now I'm probably doing a lot of social welfare, but it started off, I had a mate who was smoking pot. He said, come and try this, and I tried it, and it was all a bit okay. And the reality was I was a very shy kid. I was a good looking kid, but I was very shy, and I liked the idea of having girlfriends. And when I discovered that when you were a pot dealer, you had lots of girlfriends. So my addiction first was probably relationships, that codependency, or, trying to replace my mum. Who knows? I do know now, because I've managed to do 12-step fellowship and a number of different fellowships. So I've had a deeper understanding of me and a deeper understanding of self. But going back to that beginning was, I got into the pot first, and I was selling little matchboxes of pot, for $10, and doing quite well. But I was also then a young businessman. My brother and I had started mechanical work in service stations, old Golden Fleece service stations. And then what we did was he had McLeod, I had Northland Shopping Centre, and we developed a thing called car care centres. And those car care centres that we have had quite a few were sold on to another drug dealer and became Ultratune. So but I'd made a conscious decision after ripping off my family for quite a bit of money, 7 figures, that I thought being an international drug smuggler and drug dealer was a lot easier to do than working 14 hours a day in a garage. I didn't finish my apprenticeship as a motor mechanic because I thought, why should I be on the tools when I can hire people? So that's how we got into that business, really. So I had an entrepreneurial skill, obviously, and it progressed. So after making that incredible decision, I would like to earn the same amount of money, but work 1 hour a day and just cruise around in nice cars and have nice women. Well, it didn't work out that way. I ended up going downhill. I ended up then doing crime that I didn't want to do. Then I ended up doing an armed robbery with a bunch of guys. And before that, I was doing my own thing by myself and not getting pinched. Did a gig with a bunch of guys. I ended up doing time. I got 8 with 5 on the bottom. At Pentridge, our lovely old Pentridge, something that I share with Ronnie, but Ronnie was a bit tougher than me. He was in H division,
I didn't get the H.
All right. Well, there you go. I didn't, I was in the Metropolitan Prison for a while. I went up to Wanron and I did a few, circuits, come back to B division where I learnt to cook. I learnt to cook for 1,000 men.
Yeah, right.
Oh, another skill, and in my using days, I picked up a lot of incredible skills, and they're skills that I actually use today in my life. All those, if you can score dope off a bloke you ripped off the day before or the week before and get it on credit again, that's a fucking good skill. And I have now turned that into, I use those skills for good, trying to convince people that come in for treatment that you are an addict, and you do need treatment, you dickhead. It's quite obvious you've lost everything, lost the missus, lost the car. Like, maybe it's time to get well. So I use those skills. So, there's a positive around using for people in recovery is we can use some of those incredible skills that we develop, and especially if you're a bit of an entrepreneur and drug dealer and a bit of a negotiator, you will do well in recovery. So that whole idea is like, after hitting the nick, I thought, I'm not going to use heroin, because when I use heroin, I actually do crime, because I can't afford it if I don't. And I made a conscious decision to stop using smack. And the first day I got out, I walked out the gate and I've said to the screw on the gate, I said, mate, I'm not coming back. He says, I wish I had $1 for every time I heard that. And I said, mate, believe me, I'm not coming back. Walked up to the local Centrelink office to get your half check put in the papers, and it takes a bit of process to get a counter check. This is in the late 70s, early 80s. And I went to Brown's Hotel, which is just up from Pentridge, and all the screws that are alcoholics drink in there. So it was very weird. I'm in the bar with a couple of the old screws drinking after night shift. And that's all I remember. That's it. I don't remember getting the check. I don't remember nothing until the following morning. I wake up on the lounge room floor of my ex-girlfriend, obviously a fit on the ground, a broken flagon of McWilliams Royal Reserve. So I went to the top shelf when I got out. I only had $27 plus the half check. No money, no nothing, and back to square one. So that was early 80s. I didn't get clean until 85. And I say that story because it's sort of like, I've used enough, long enough, and done enough damage to myself to qualify for recovery. To basically understand that I can't get away with using, back in the early days, Narcotics Anonymous was that anonymous I was going to die. So there was AA, and on this fateful day when I'd fucking had enough and I was homeless and I was dying from fucking exposure, and I thought, fuck it, I'll go home to my mum and see if I can get a bed. I knocked on the door. She didn't recognize me because I had the sort of Rasta look, which was not a fashion statement. It was what happens when you don't wash your hair for a few months. And the smell, and she just looked through the grill, because she'd put a grill on the front of our house so I couldn't break in anymore. And I said, it's me, Mum. So she took me in and bathed me, threw me in the bath straight away, threw away the clothes, bathed me, and then said, look, if you want to stay here, you're going to have to go to a program or something. So I thought, I'll go see my old psychiatrist, who I'd been seeing for about 6 years. And this dude, I could manipulate him. He was pretty smart, but I could manipulate him. So I'd go there for court reports. I'd go there for, getting whatever off my back. So I thought, I'll go there, get my mother off my back, and I'll be able to, have some clean sheets, some good food. I love my mother's roast. And I thought, I'll go get some good food and get better. And I'm only thinking physically, like getting well, not recovering. Fuck. Yes. Last thing in my head. But she said, you got to go see this. And the psychiatrist wasn't there. And there was this old locum. He was about 72. He had white hair, probably looked a bit like me, but then he looked very old. And when I walked in, he had my file on his lap, which was about this thick, like just all the shit and all the episodes of care that I'd had with this place. It was Wingrove Community Cottage. So it's not there anymore. And it was full of psych patients, people with mental health issues. But half of them would have been drug-related mental health issues before we started recognizing that, hey, we've probably got a mental health issue before we use drugs, and then the drugs make it fucking worse. Yep. So it, I go in, I looked at him, and he's chain smoking, lighting one off the other in the, like back then you could smoke in the counselling rooms. You could have a smoke. So I'd have one smoke in the whole hour, and he's fucking... And he's looked through my thing. He says, what do you want to do? I said, well, I've got to do something about myself. I'm back at home with my mum, and she wants me to do a program. And he looked through everything. And at that stage, I'd been to every drug and alcohol rehab in Victoria, government rehab, which are quite a few, Gresswell, Smith Street, Pleasant View. I'd been on half a dozen methadone programs. Been to a couple of private hospitals then that were trying to help, but first come into the scene. And he just looked at me. He said, mate, well, you've tried everything. He said, probably the only thing that's left for you is AA. because I'm drinking a lot of piss, you know. Like for the last 2 years, I've been drinking a lot. And I looked at him and said, mate, I've tried that. I've seen AA in prison. I've seen AA at Pleasantview. I've seen AA at all the rehabs, right? AA was rife. It was there at every rehab. And I've been there. I've tried that and it doesn't work. And then he just looked over the top of his glasses like this. He goes, Richard, it's either fucking AA or amen.
Mm.
Then loaded another cigarette. And I thought, oh, fuck, mate. All right, well, how do I get in touch with them, right? Because I've never been to one really in the open.
Yep.
Free, like going to 10 myself. He said it's you'll find a number in the telephone book. So this is when we had telephone books, long before fucking Google, long before your mobile phones. You know, it's a white and yellow pages. Hands me the white pages. I open it up and there are more AA, AAA, quadruple A's than you can fucking poke a stick. There's like about 5 pages of them. And I'm thinking, fuck me, I can't find it. He said, well, spell it. Now, I'm a pretty intelligent dude. I could not spell alcoholic.
Mm.
And he spelled it for me. I opened up and I still remember the phone number, 4291833. It's actually still 94291833. So, you know, it was embedded in my head. I rang them up. This guy, Mick D, got on the phone and he goes, why don't you come to a meeting tonight? Blah, blah, blah. It's down at Reservoir and, you know, I live in West Heidelberg. Okay, I'll come. Go home, tell the parents the good news. But on the way home, I get a little flask of whiskey and drink that, you know, I'll stop when when I'm fucking forced to stop, I suppose. Get home and the old man, when he gets home, he says, so where is this thing you got to go to? And I said, it's AA, it's in Reservoir, Edwards Park Lake. And it's 8 o'clock. And he said, okay, good. And then he goes off and does his thing. At about 5 to 8, my old man comes in and says, so what's happening? Aren't you supposed to be going to that meeting in Reservoir? And I said, oh, fuck, it's too late. I'll have to go tomorrow. I'll go tomorrow. And he just looked at me and he said, well, you won't be going from here.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the line. And it was like, fuck. All right. And he said, well, I'll give you a lift. I thought, fuck, okay, I'll get out of this trap. I'll get another night in bed and another couple of nights in bed. Okay, Dad, let's go. It takes me down to Reservoir. And I'm thinking in my head, the old Lakeside Hotel is just down the road. So he can drop me off, you know, and I'll just go and have a drink down at the Lakeside. Anyway, we stop out the front and there's a little slither of light where the door's a little bit open and it's got a vestibule. You know, it's a church with a little box on the outside where you hang your coats. And I said, all right, Dad, see you later. He said, oh, no, look, I'll just wait, make sure they're there, you know, because if you're not, you can come back with me. Oh, fucking hell, all right. So I go into the vestibule thinking, he'll fuck off and I'll just go for a walk. I walk into the vestibule and who in the fuck is there but Mick D, waiting, like swooped on me. Oh, fuck. Richard puts his hand out, shakes my hand, and I just looked at him. And if you're as old as Ronnie and I, there used to be a bloke on Channel 7 called Happy Hammond in Melbourne. He wear check bloody jackets with striped shirts and triangles and a straw hat. Looked like a fucking clown. Well, this bloke was dressed like him, less the hat. So my first thought is, how are you going to help me? You haven't got even any dress sense. Come in, Richard, make a cup of tea, come in. And by this stage, the DTs have started to kick in, so I'm hallucinating. So he became a bit weird. He did become a bit of a clown character. I was sitting there listening to the meetings and, yeah, right, okay, it finishes, having a cup of tea. And I said, oh, look, I'll get going. They said, look, we've organised a lift for you, and these people can pick you up tomorrow and take you to another meeting. Oh, fuck me, this is well organised. You know, so that's how it started for me in the other firm. You know, I still don't mind going to any 12-step meeting because I can look at the blueprint that I live my life by. Might have slightly different words, but it's the same blueprint, the same principles in the step, the same concepts that are around. And so, you know, I haven't had a drink since then. That was November 7, 1985. So that gives me over 37 years, and I'm 68 years old. My twin's over here next to me. He's the same age and same timer. I kept hanging around the fellowship, and back then, you know, we had women like Dandy Jean. If you started sharing your drug story, she'd tell you to sit down. Fucking, you know, not very welcoming. Some people were really welcoming. You know, I've got lots of stories about that early days of fellowship, but I remember, you know, I didn't like the word God, and I remember talking to this bloke who used to turn up in the monk outfit, you know, with the knots all tied. He was a brother. And I say, mate, look, I'd like to have a talk to you about God. You know, do you believe in God? And he turned around and said, no.
Yeah.
Fucking, you know, you're a fucking Catholic thingy. You know, what's going on here? And there was this American woman who was about 30 years sober back then, who was on doing a tour, you know, Joe and Charlie Big Book Study Group, and I had a chat with her, and I said, look, because I heard a little bit of a drug story in his story, and I said, look, I'm having a bit of trouble, you know, trying to work out, because I heard about this joint, Narcotics Anonymous, and people telling me don't go there because they do drugs. You know, it'd be like saying don't go to AA because they sell alcohol, but. And I said to her, I said, look, I don't know. And she said, well, really what you need in this program is identification in depth.
Yes.
And that's what I got when I went to my first meeting of Narcotics Anonymous. It was just in depth, except when I heard a guy talking about his higher power saved his life. And I thought, fucking, how is higher purchase going to fucking save your life? You know, I still hadn't got used to the language of what was going on. I had to learn the language, and you know, HP to me was high purchase, you know, and he was talking about his bike burning and his HP. And I thought, must have had HP on the bike. I was really rattled. But I kept coming to meetings. And my sponsor at the time used to say to me, Richard, and I've only had one point where I thought I was going to relapse, where I really fucking was going to relapse. I was 6 months clean. It was my belly button birthday. I was going to be 32 years old. And all the NA, this is before mobile phones too. So all the NA members said to me, Richard, don't worry, we'll come and help you set up the party. It was going to be a fancy dress party, and we'll come and, you know. So by about 12 o'clock, no one's turned up. And I've gone, those fucking cunts. And I kept trying to ring their landlines. No one answered the phone. I thought, fuck you. I'm just going to go and have a drink. I'm going to fucking show everyone. I'm just going to have a drink. So I rang my sponsor up, who lived across the road. And prior to me moving into a flat in the same street as him, he used to say to me, because he knew I was living with my mum, he said, hey, if you need to get some space, you can come and stay in our spare room. And he lived with this guy, Monty, right? And I never thought anything, like I just thought they were mates, right? Because I'm homophobic, by the way, right? And this guy who saved my life and fucking, you know, looked after me, you know, was living with a bloke in a 2-bedroom apartment and had a spare bedroom.
Yeah.
Do the numbers, right? So I'm going to go and relapse. So I ring him up across on the landline, and he goes, oh, well, that's all right, mate. He says, why don't you pop in on the way to the Toc H, which was up on Turek Road, the hotel. Yeah. I went, all right. I went there, knocked on the door opened, and here was this other AA member, Jeff, red hair, ginger beard, hairy chest, and a green frock. It was like, fuck me. What? Okay, because I'm cool. I know everything, so I'm not going to say to him, what's going on, mate? What are you doing wearing a fucking dress, you idiot? He gets me in, and I walk in the door, and here's my sponsor sitting at a Singer sewing machine, sewing this big white boa onto this white gown. And he's wearing knickers, a bra, and suspender belts. I'm cool, right? And he goes, you know where the coffee pot is? And I've gone, yeah, I fucking straight through into the kitchen, and I made a coffee, and I come out and I sat down, and I'm thinking, you know, how you going? What's going on? And then as I've walked out of the kitchen, this stunning woman was walking down their stairs, and I just fell in love. I thought, you know, that's it. I've got to hang here and see what I can do. Right? So I'm sitting there having a cup of tea. She's parading up and down and doing all the things and got the everything. And I just said to Neil, I said, mate, what's going on? Because I fucking couldn't work it out. He goes, oh, we're getting ready for the alternate Miss World Ball for the Victorian AIDS Council. And fucking all of a sudden the penny dropped. My fucking sponsor's a drag queen.
85.
OMG. And the girl I've fallen in love with, Robert.
Robert.
You know, I've gone, woo, hello, Robert. I don't want to love you anymore, but, you know.
Come on, mate. See, no one's going to hear. No one's going to know.
So only in jail, Ron, you know.
Yeah. What happens in jail stays in jail, mate.
That's right, mate. So let's just keep it there. But anyway, there were some of the really interesting, intriguing things that happened in my early recovery. You know, here I am. I'm going to this AA meeting, and after it, going bowling with them down at the old Southern Cross Hotel, dressed up, thinking I'm going to get a girl, and it was the gay and lesbian fucking meeting, the first gay and lesbian meeting in Australia. My sponsor started. And I'm there, you know. I don't know whether they're hoping I'd convert or anything, but it was just, you know, my life. He was later on to die from HIV, from AIDS, and well, he did back then it was a fatal disease, and he had some serious illnesses, so he did an assisted suicide. Had a big party before it, the night before, and then did the assisted suicide the following day. And I cry now still when I hear Somewhere Over the Rainbow, because that was the song when they carried his coffin out. But, you know, I've had a few sponsors since then, but that guy saved my life. And he kept being my sponsor while I was in Narcotics Anonymous. I moved on quicker than him because I did stuff like set up the first needle and syringe exchange in Melbourne, started working at the other society, set up rehabs, you know, just because there was nothing for injecting drug users in Melbourne. There was no support services, all for alkies. So as soon as you turned up somewhere, they'd freak out if you were a junkie. And the alkie would get the Guernsey, not you. So I set up a halfway house with Windana. You know, earned them a lot of money, did a whole lot of stuff in my career. You know, I founded a whole lot of different programs, had the first peer education program around HIV and Hep C in the early 80s, mid 80s. So I managed to, and I went back to study. You know, I was doing meetings. I did 2 meetings a day. In my first 90 days, Neil, my gay sponsor, I said, how many meetings I've got to do, mate? You know? And I remember going to the midday meeting, which was called the Gallery, and I see these people getting in the chair, and I said to him, fuck, I'd love to be the chairperson. He said, Richard, you can be the chairperson here every day. Oh, you've noticed my talent. He said, yeah, get here early and put the fucking chairs out.
Yeah.
So I was the permanent chairperson of the Gallery for about 6 months. You know, so there was some incredible things that happened, and you know, I went to Narcotics Anonymous, and you know, I've been clean ever since. I've worked the steps in my life, as I said. When he said, that's what I was going to say, how many meetings do I have to do? And he said to me, you got to do your meetings like you did your using, Richard. And I went, fuck off. That means I've got to go to meetings all day, every day. He said, well, if that's how you use, then that's what you should do. So the first 90 days, I did 210 meetings. And then for the next 2 years, did 2 meetings a day. Yeah. And what I did was I set up the halfway house so I could take everyone to the midday meeting. You drive the bus, you know. Right. Fuck, it mightn't have been for them, but it was for me, you know. And that was my journey. I went back to study. I finished my degree in behavioural science. I finished a postgraduate in social science. And I kept developing services. So, you know, quite simply now I've gone from being a homeless junkie to the owner of a fairly well-established brand in the rehab business, and that's the Hader Clinic here, and Seasons overseas. So for a while there, we had a rehab in Sri Lanka, Portugal, Thailand, Bali. We still have one in Bali. And now in Melbourne, I have a 28-bed private psychiatric hospital and a 30-bed longer-term rehab, old school type rehab. And I established Hayter Queensland with a partner, and they got 25 beds hospital, and I think the same 30 beds in rehab.
Yeah.
So I've probably been the instrument of 12 stepping over 20,000 people. In other words, I put them in a fucking bus.
Mhm.
You know, yes, in rehab, I've always had people say, "Oh, you just sell your 12-step pro." I don't. I've never known a meeting to send a bus out to pick anyone up. I've never known a meeting to feed people. I've never known meetings to have someone who will sit with you for a couple of hours a week and listen to your bullshit. Run groups to try and teach you how to cook, how to shit, you know, without, you know, needing some substances. You know, so I provide some bells and whistles to the whole rehab process. But really, it's you know, we take you out of the environment and give you a chance. That's how I look at it. I'm still going to meetings of Narcotics Anonymous. I'm a secretary of a group still. You know, when people say to me, "Oh fuck, I'm so happy I'm getting out of rehab," I'm going, "Fuck, I haven't been out of rehab. I've been in it for 7 years now. This March will be 37 years that I've been working in rehabs, and I love it. I love it. But I know in working in this area, you know, this is for people who are working, 2 cappers. I have to probably do more program than the normal bean counter. You know, I've been fortunate enough to have done the 12 steps in 5 fellowships because I've got a daughter who's currently using fucking fried rice. If we reckon smack was bad shit, this shit's on. This epidemic is the worst I've seen in my whole career. I've been in the drug scene. If you add my using and my clean time, I've been in this scene 54 years. When it comes to providing services, nothing's changed as far as the government's concerned. That's why I went into private practice. And, you know, so my daughter's currently using, and I went to Al-anon to deal with that because I had to learn how to get support from other fathers. And, you know, I believe in self-help. So you get with where you get identification. So I had trouble with relating to my daughter and thinking I could fix her. I go to Al-anon, I get a sponsor. His name's Richard. Fuck, poor cunt. And, you know, I went through the steps in Al-anon. And then, you know, so I've done AA, NA, Al-anon. Then I realised after quite a few years, I've got an issue with sex and drugs and codependency, right? So I managed it quite well. I've been married 7 times. So when I meet a girl, I marry them to prove that I love them and I need them and whatever.
Great weekend.
Yeah.
Great weekend.
That's right. Fortunately, I have been married in my last marriage for now 9 years. And that's because she goes to Al-anon. She knows how to put up with idiots like us or me. And so I've done the 12 steps in SAA, Sex Addicts Anonymous. And just more recently, was it last year? Not last year, the year before last year, I went through the 12 steps in ACOA. So adult children of alcoholics, because I got a friend who got clean in NA with me at the same time 37 years ago. He doesn't go to NA anymore, you know, has a couple of red wines. I said, mate, how do you do this? He says, well, I go to ACOA. Now, I didn't go to ACOA to have a couple of red wines. I went to ACOA because I saw him. He was talking about understanding his early childhood and relationship building and all the stuff that, you know, that got me into the drug scene. So if you remember what I said, I think we've got mental health issues before we start using drugs. Then we start using drugs and the drugs make the mental health issues more.
Exactly. Exasperates.
Outstanding. That's the word, exasperates them and makes them huge. And that's what I treat with now. So having been 37 years, I've traveled the world. I've done all the things that I wanted to do. But most of all, and look, I've had heaps of shit. I've got a son who's 33 years old now. In a couple of 5 days' time, he turns 34. He's profoundly disabled. So he's 34 going on 1. He's physically okay. It's just that he had an allergic reaction to a childhood immunisation and had really bad seizures and created brain damage. So I had that. I've lived with that trauma daily. That's not like the same trauma as losing a loved one because they're dead and they're gone. This is constant trauma of not having a son that I really never kicked a football with, never played with. So I know how to deal with trauma. You know, I grew up in West Heidelberg. I was bullied. So what I did, this is how smart we are as addicts. I manipulated and conned the biggest bully to be my best friend. And he became my protector. And that's where I got the name Brains. I was at Heidelberg Tech, I was called Brains because I come up with all the scams and the heavies just looked after me, you know, and that's been my life. So, yeah, it's I've had that trauma. I've obviously had the trauma of having to halve my assets 6 times. Divide your shit in half 6 times and see how you feel, right?
Yeah, I do.
Right. So I've gone through that, the trauma of marriage breakdowns. I've had a sponsee run off with my wife, who I then chased with a gun. I was going to shoot him, shoot the missus, shoot myself, and then I thought, who's going to look after the kids? So I'll shoot the kids. I was 7 years clean.
Yep.
And luckily, I've got a tight network of friends in the fellowship. So a guy near me in Maryborough, I was in Castlemaine, he's a 40-minute drive away, hears that this has happened. Not that I'm going to shoot, so I just heard that Richard's fucking, you know, he's probably doing it hard. And I wasn't at home. I didn't have a phone number because we didn't have mobile phones. I was living in someone's fucking bungalow. While this turkey is living in my house, driving my car, driving my kids to school, and I discovered wearing my fucking hunting boots. So I'm going to go and hunt you with my Mauser 5.6 by 55, and I can blow your head off at about 500 meters.
Yeah.
That's how I went snap. Well, luckily, Crackers, he's no longer with us. He's passed away from this disease. He come around to the bungalow, knocked on the door. Here I am sitting on the couch loading this Mauser and getting ready to fucking go off and do the deed. Crying. So you can imagine he walks in the door, sees this bloke with a rifle. He's crying, pretty fucking freaky. And he goes, oh, Richard, is that the gun you were sporting up for the pigs? Because we used to go pig shooting. I said, yeah, mate, it is. He said, give me a look. I didn't even think. I just passed him the rifle. Took the bolt out, stuck it in his pocket and said, you think we should go to a meeting? Saved that bloke's life, saved everyone's life that night. And the only time I've been to rehab, except for just recently with sex addiction, was I went back to a rehab I had founded and started at 7 years clean. I've walked back into a rehab where all the staff were my ex-clients. Yeah. So that was a humbling experience. And I got humble and I went, you know, I'm here because I need to be here. So, you know, when the going gets tough, the tough do what they have to do. Exactly. Stay well. You know, we'll do whatever it is because I don't want that old shit back. And, you know, then after that, I think I found the love of my life after about 3 marriages. And I'm with this girl who's running a thing called Breaking the Cycle. And we're just madly, madly in love. And she's murdered by a fucking serial killer, Peter Dupas. And that just fucking floored me, you know, floored me. And I just couldn't, I didn't go to work for about 3-4 months. I couldn't do nothing. I was fucked. And that was the biggest thing. Now, I couldn't use over that because she would have been so pissed off with me. She wasn't in recovery, but she'd had issues in her younger life and had got clean without the fellowship and had a very successful career. And Nikki Patterson, God rest her soul, she was a lovely, lovely woman. They did great work with young people. So I had that, you know. So if you think that what gets me close to fucking using is there was one other time where I was close to using. Well, I didn't fucking use. I was driving to Melbourne. I had a rehab in Bacchus Marsh. I lived in Daylesford. So those who don't know that, it's a couple of hours out of Melbourne. The rehab's an hour out. My home was 2 hours out. And I remember driving past Pike's Reservoir, and I thought, I think I'll just drive my car into the reservoir. I've got the 2 kids in the back in the baby seats, because my son's disabled, my daughter's a wreck, and it was just, my life's fucking miserable. And luckily, I didn't, because I didn't want to damage the electrics in the fucking UNOS.
Yeah.
That's insanity. And what it was as simple as I was working in the field, in the rehab, running a rehab, doing all the things, but I hadn't been to a meeting for myself for 6 months.
Yeah. Okay.
And luckily I rang up my sponsor and he said, I'll come down for a coffee, Richard. And there was a new meeting started around the corner from the coffee. If he told me come down to a meeting, I told him to get fucked.
Yeah.
He told me come down for a coffee. So he knew, what to do with me. So so there's been a few real incidences in my life where when you hear people's story, they say, oh, I had to fucking use because of this. I don't use under any circumstance.
No matter what.
No matter what. No, it's that simple. And, I still practice what I say to everybody, I don't pick up under any circumstance. I get to meetings of Narcotics Anonymous regularly.
Yeah.
I have a home group. I do service. I work the steps and traditions in order in their entirety.
Yes.
And that's all you need to do. Those 5 things in your life, you will fucking stay well. Everyone I know, like Ronnie, like, some really good friends of mine in the firm, that's all they've done.
Yep.
And I said before, I went from homeless junkie to owning, at one stage, probably the largest international rehab in the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's because I worked the program. If you want what I've got, if you want to drive the nice cars that I've got out the front here, got a couple of Jags and a beautiful old Land Rover, just do what I've done.
Yeah.
Do what I've done. If you keep it simple, I'm lucky. We used to say keep it simple, stupid. My name's Smith, so it's keep it simple, Smith. But I can be stupid.
Yeah.
And I've appreciated Ronnie asking me to share. I've probably shared for about 100 fucking minutes.
Nah.
40. I've
40
got
minutes.
to stop. I've got to stop.
Good.
He did say 40 minutes. So
well, good.
There you go. I've done it. So if there's any questions that you want me to highlight so the people on your little blog here can get some handy hints, I'm willing.
And
so thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
no,
I'm a grateful member of Narcotics Anonymous. You can't bust on an attitude of gratitude. Simple.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A grateful addict won't use drugs. I believe that fully. Man, that was so fucking intense.
For you, what about me?
We have so many similarities. It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
I had a son who was disabled. He died at 40 years of age. And he was disabled from birth.
Yeah, they do say that Alex will probably, pass over earlier than most.
Yeah.
I'll probably outlive him.
He caught a thing called encephalitis at the fucking children's hospital at birth.
Caused a brain injury.
Then they operated 9 times before he was 8 months old or something. And he used to go into seizures. He actually died in seizure.
So that's the same as my son. So he would have looked very normal.
Yeah.
Just had seizures. Yeah.
Had his arm was a little bit from all the operations. He had one arm that was a little bit, and he had a little bit of a limp. Had a photographic memory.
Yeah.
Fucking, he could tell you every game that St. George won, right back to the very first game, who played it, who kicked the goal at what minute.
That wasn't because there wasn't too many won, or I'm joking.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, he's just, his brain was unbelievable,
And God bless him.
And I got clean in 1981. We were told not to share because NA wasn't really happening. It was just starting in Sydney. We was told, please don't talk about your drug addiction at AA. Please don't talk about your jail and your violence and your stealing. We didn't steal. And I used to say, no, you stole time. And they started, but the reality was, mate, I was still welcome. Yeah. I was still welcome. They still kept on saying to me, keep coming back.
Yeah.
And no one had told me to come back for a long time.
Yeah.
Now, I remember the first time someone said, hi, Ron. When I returned to a meeting, it was so exciting that somebody remembered my name.
Yeah.
For an egomaniac with an inferiority complex, I
relate to that.
I was fucking confused. Because on the outside, people say, because I grew up a gangster, he's so willing, that kid, he's a willing little bloke. That was the biggest thing that when I grew up, he's willing. And yet I was scared of the dark. I couldn't walk down the street without walking down the middle of the street like that because I was afraid of nothing. Unfounded fear drove my whole life.
Yeah.
Fear of not being enough. It scared the hell out of me, not being enough, and I learned to fight and I learned all that stuff and I was violent and all that stuff. But the thing I was trying to kill was the human side of me. Because I say I was a human taking, not a human being.
Yeah.
And when I got clean, I become a human being.
Yep.
And it's been really slow, and I'm a big believer in you can only keep what you got by giving it away. I do a 12-step program. I believe the other 11 steps are only to get you ready for the 12-step.
Yeah.
To me, the 12 steps the most important step.
Yep.
I know that I haven't got a drinking problem. I've got a thinking problem. Yeah. I got a fucking heart of gold with that spaghetti. And I had to unravel that spaghetti and work out what was fucking good spaghetti and what was shit spaghetti. And I've done that through working the steps.
Absolutely.
And I did PTSD and I did outside things as well. I needed help from other things because of other issues that I had. But I was an addict a long time before I ever took a drug.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
My thinking problem, that's why I say to people now, the first week I let them talk about their drug addiction, their drugs, then I tell them to fuck the word drug off.
Yeah.
I start talking about their thinking problem, their issue with their thinking, their issue with their self-worth. Okay, we all have trauma, some at the moment, yourself in the industry, they're making it all out. Dr. fucking whatever his name, the bloke that talks about trauma, the Canadian guy.
Mate. Gabor Mate.
Gabor Mate, right? They all like, it's because of this. Okay. I actually try to make a meeting with him. I have twin daughters.
Yeah.
One's 15 years clean, the other one's never been an addict.
Yeah. Yeah.
Both grew up in the same house. Went to the same schools.
Look, and there's plenty of that evidence. So I don't mind Gabor. Yeah, he's okay. He's going to be at the national conference, the Australian and New Zealand National Conference in Queensland. Now I'm hearing a bit of rumbling in my background here because at 10 to 6 my time, I've got to take my wife to pick up a girlfriend so they can go and get on the piss. Well,
you should do that because otherwise, you know what? Happy wife, happy life.
That's right. And don't worry, I will never get on the piss if I'm unhappy.
Yes.
If she's unhappy, I'll just
I'll go to a meeting.
I'll compartmentalize and go to a meeting.
Exactly.
But if you're ever, people listening to this, you're ever in Ocean Grove or Geelong area, and you've got, you got nowhere to go on a Wednesday night, I have a fantastic meeting that I'm the secretary of. And we have a hospital down in Geelong, so people with a bit of time up will be welcome to come in and say hello. I'm a grateful member, and I'm grateful to you, Ronnie, for inviting me on your blog.
Thank you, mate.
And I hope that someone might have got a little bit of an idea out of what I've said, and God bless you all, huh?
Thank you, Richard. Mate, be safe. Enjoy the family, and we'll catch up soon, eh?
Yeah, we will, mate.
I'm down there. I'm down there soon. See you, mate.
Come and see me.
I will, 100%. See you, brother.
See ya.
I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.